I never imagined a single shift at a shopping mall could rewrite my entire life. One minute, I was folding designer dresses, scraping by on a retail wage, trying to piece together a future from the ashes of my past. The next, I was humiliated in front of a crowd, my dignity torn apart by someone who thought I was less than nothing. But what happened after that? A stranger's voice, one I'd never heard before, would turn my world upside down. If you've ever felt invisible, overlooked, or crushed under the weight of life's unfairness, this story will show you that sometimes the universe has plans far bigger than your wildest dreams. Stick around until the end. The twist will leave you speechless. My name is Sophie Carter, and 6 months ago, I was just another face in the crowd. At 27, I was working at Lux Vogue, an upscale boutique in the Westfield Pinnacle, a sprawling shopping center in Los Angeles that glittered with wealth and ambition. The mall was a microcosm of the city itself, a mix of old money, new money, and those of us just trying to survive. I was firmly in that last group, barely making ends meet on a retail salary and a trickle of commission. My divorce had been finalized 4 months earlier, leaving me with a cramped studio apartment in a neighborhood where rent kept climbing, a mountain of credit card debt, and a student loan I'd been dodging since I dropped out of college. The American dream? For me, it was more like the American grind. That Tuesday morning in July 2025 started like any other. I arrived at Lux Vogue 30 minutes early, as I always did, to make sure everything was flawless. The store was a shrine to luxury. Racks of silk dresses that cost more than my monthly rent. Glass cases filled with jewelry that sparkled under soft LED lights. And mannequins draped in outfits I could never afford. In luxury retail, presentation was everything. Customers expected perfection, and I couldn't afford to give anyone a reason to complain. My manager, a sharp-eyed woman named Carla, had made it clear, one wrong move and I'd be out the door. Jobs like this were hard to come by in a city where inflation had driven up the cost of everything from groceries to gas, and I wasn't about to risk it. I moved through my routine with practiced precision, steaming dresses to remove every crease, polishing the jewelry cases until they gleamed, rearranging the window displays to catch the eye of passing shoppers. Outside, the Westfield Pinnacle buzzed with life. Families strolled through the wide, marble-tiled corridors, their arms laden with shopping bags from Gucci and Prada. Teenagers clustered around the food court, laughing over boba teas and snapping selfies for TikTok. Influencers prowled the aisles, filming try-on hauls or live-streaming their shopping sprees on X, hoping to go viral. The mall wasn't just a place to shop. It was a stage, and everyone was performing. Even me, in my carefully pressed white blouse and gray skirt, both from the store's budget line, played my part. The smiling, helpful salesgirl who never let her exhaustion show. I needed this job desperately. After my ex-husband, Mark, walked out, I was left with nothing but his share of our debt and a lease I could barely cover. My dream of going back to college to study digital marketing felt like a fantasy, something I'd scribbled in a notebook during late-night shifts but could never afford. The weight of it all, bills piling up, a landlord threatening eviction, the constant pressure to smile through it, made me feel like I was drowning. But I held on to a fragile hope that things would get better, that somehow, someway, life would. Give me a break. The mall was busier than usual that day, the summer crowd swollen with tourists and locals alike. From my spot behind the counter, I watched the parade of shoppers pass by. Some paused to admire our window displays, a cascade of emerald green gowns and diamond necklaces that screamed elegance, while others hurried past without a glance. 3 years in retail had taught me to read people quickly. You could tell within seconds who was here to spend and who was just browsing. The serious buyers carried themselves with purpose, their eyes scanning for something specific. The browsers lingered, touching fabrics they'd never buy, their faces lit with curiosity or envy. Around 11 a.m., I was adjusting a display of cashmere scarves when I noticed a woman standing at the entrance, her silhouette framed against the bright lights of the mall. She was in her early 50s, with perfectly styled blonde hair swept into an elegant updo and a cream-colored suit that screamed money. Her handbag, a sleek Hermes Birkin, probably cost more than my annual salary. She had the kind of confidence that came from never worrying about a bill, never checking a price tag. Her eyes swept over the store, then landed on me with an expression that made my stomach tighten. I'd seen that look before, the kind that sized you up and found you wanting. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "I need assistance now." I plastered on my best customer service smile and walked toward her. "Of course, I'd be happy to help. My name's Sophie. What are you looking for today?" She didn't return the smile. Instead, she looked me up and down, her gaze lingering on my modest outfit. "I'm attending a charity gala tonight," she said, her tone dripping with importance. "It's a high-profile event, and I need a dress that makes an impression. Something sophisticated, not some tacky, off-the-rack nonsense. I'll be photographed, and I expect to look impeccable." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "Absolutely, I understand. Let's find something perfect for the occasion. May I ask the name of the event? That might help me tailor our options." She sighed, as if my question was an imposition. "The Pinnacle Gala, hosted by the Ellison Foundation. My husband chairs it. Surely you've heard of it." I hadn't, but I nodded anyway. "Of course. Let me show you our newest arrivals. We have some stunning pieces that would be perfect for a gala." As I led her toward the evening wear section, I felt the weight of her presence behind me. This was Margaret Ellison, I realized, piecing together the name from local news articles I'd skimmed on X. Her husband, Richard Ellison, was a big shot in real estate, and their foundation was a darling of the LA elite, known for splashy events that raised millions while doubling as photo ops for the city's rich and famous. Margaret wasn't just a customer. She was a test. One wrong move, and she could make my life miserable. I pulled a sleek black gown from the rack, its subtle beading catching the light. "This is one of our best sellers," I said, holding it up. "The cut is timeless, and it photographs beautifully." She barely glanced at it. "Black is so predictable," she said, dismissing it with a wave of her manicured hand. "Show me something with more presence." I swallowed my frustration and reached for another dress, a deep sapphire number with delicate draping. "This one is elegant but bold," I said. "The color is striking, and the fit is very flattering." She pursed her lips, inspecting the dress like it was evidence in a crime scene. "Blue? Really? It's far too loud for my complexion." "Do you even know what you're doing?" I kept my smile in place, though my cheeks ached. "Let me try another option. We just received some pieces from our designer collection that might be exactly what you're looking for." As I turned back to the racks, I caught a glimpse of the crowd outside. A few shoppers had paused, their phones raised, filming or snapping photos. It wasn't unusual people loved capturing the drama of luxury retail for X or TikTok, where a single post could go viral in hours. I felt a prickle of unease. Whatever happened next, I had a sinking feeling it wouldn't end well. The moment Margaret Ellison stepped into Looks Vogue, the air in the store shifted, like the temperature dropping before a storm. Her cream-colored suit gleamed under the boutique's soft lights, and the Hermes Birkin bag dangling from her arms screamed wealth louder than any words could. I'd seen customers like her before, people who walked in expecting the world to bend to their will, but something about Margaret's cold, appraising stare told me this wasn't going to be an easy sale. I was Sophie Carter, a 27-year-old retail worker scraping by in Los Angeles, and I knew my job depended on keeping women like her happy. But as the minutes ticked by, I realized happiness wasn't on Margaret Ellison's agenda. I led her to the evening wear section, my heart pounding but my smile firmly in place. For the Pinnacle Gala, I'd recommend something elegant yet commanding, I said, pulling a burgundy gown with delicate crystal beading from the rack. This piece has a timeless silhouette, and the beading adds just the right touch of sophistication for a high-profile event. Margaret barely glanced at the dress before waving it away. Burgundy? Honestly, do I look like someone who wears such a pedestrian color? Her voice was sharp, each word laced with disdain. I told you, I need something that makes an impression. This looks like something you'd wear to a high school reunion. I swallowed the sting of her words, keeping my tone professional. I understand. Let's try something else. I reached for a sleek ivory dress with intricate draping, a piece that had flown off the racks for other gala-bound customers. This one is from our latest designer collection. The fabric is luxurious, and the cut is perfect for photographs. She took the dress from me, holding it up with the scrutiny of an art critic. Her lips curled into a sneer. Ivory? With my skin tone? It's like you're not even trying. She tossed the dress back at me, and it slid off the counter onto the floor. Do you even understand what it means to dress for an event like the Pinnacle Gala? Or is this just another day of playing dress-up for you? Her words hit like a slap, but I bent down to pick up the dress, smoothing it carefully before hanging it back on the rack. I could feel eyes on me, not just Margaret's, but those of other customers who had wandered into the store, drawn by the rising tension. A teenage girl in the corner was holding up her phone, probably filming for TikTok or X in 2025. Every moment was content, and I was about to become someone's viral cautionary tale. I'm sorry if these aren't what you're looking for, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. Could you share a bit more about the look you're envisioning? Maybe a specific color or style? Margaret sighed dramatically, as if I'd asked her to explain quantum mechanics. I shouldn't have to spoon-feed you, she snapped. This is a charity gala, not some low-rent cocktail party. I need something that screams elegance, something that says I belong on the red carpet, not serving drinks at it. Her eyes flicked over my simple white blouse and gray skirt, and she smirked. Though I suppose someone like you wouldn't understand the difference. My cheeks burned, but I kept my composure. 3 years in retail had taught me that some customers were impossible to please. They came in with their egos already bruised, looking for someone to take it out on, and I was the unlucky target. Let me show you a few more options, I said, moving to another rack. We just received a stunning emerald green dress that's been very popular for high-end events. I held up the dress, its rich fabric catching the light like a jewel. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of interest in her eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it came. Green? She said, her voice dripping with mockery. Do you think I'm trying to look like a Christmas ornament? This is exactly why. I avoid places like this. No one here has any sense of taste. I bit my lip, fighting the urge to respond. I needed this job. Every cent of my paycheck went to rent, groceries, and the endless interest on my credit card debt. Inflation had made everything in LA feel like a luxury, from a cup of coffee to a tank of gas. Losing this job wasn't an option, not when I was already one late payment away from eviction. Let's try a classic red dress, I suggested, pulling out a sleek floor-length gown that was a favorite among our clientele. It's timeless and photographs beautifully, perfect for making a statement without being too flashy. Margaret took the dress, examining it with the same critical intensity. For a brief second, I dared to hope I'd finally found something she'd like. Then she shook her head. Red? Really? It's so common. Do you have anything original, or is this the best you can do? Her words were like a needle, sharp and deliberate, designed to make me feel small. I could feel the weight of the Store's attention now. Other customers pretending to browse while stealing glances, their phones still raised. The teenage girl whispered something to her friend, and they both giggled. I wondered how many likes their video would get. How many strangers on X would watch me unravel. The tension in Luke's Vogue asterisk was palpable now. The air thick with the anticipation of a crowd sensing drama. Margaret Ellison stood in front of me. Her arms crossed, her Hermes bag swaying slightly as she shifted her weight. I could feel my commission slipping away as I ignored other customers to focus on her. But store policy demanded I give her my full attention. I was trapped, and she knew it. I've shown you nearly everything in your size, I said, my voice calm despite the knot in my stomach. If you could be more specific about what you're looking for, I'm sure we can find the perfect dress. Margaret's eyes narrowed, and her face flushed with anger. Are you implying I don't know what I want? She said, her voice rising. Are you saying I'm being difficult? No, not at all, I replied quickly, my heart racing. I just want to make sure we find something you love for the gala. She laughed, a cold, humorless sound that echoed through the store. You? Help me? You're a salesgirl in a mall boutique. What could you possibly know about style or sophistication? She gestured at my outfit, her lip curling. Look at yourself. That blouse looks like it came from a clearance rack. You're out of your depth, and it shows. The words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. My outfit was from Luke's Vogue's collection, professional and appropriatoristic, but it felt like she was dismissing my entire existence. I glanced down at my blouse, suddenly self-conscious, and saw the crowd outside the storefront growing. A man in a baseball cap was filming now, his phone angled to capture every moment. I could already imagine the caption, asterisk entitled customer. Loses it at luxury store, you won't believe what happens next. Asterisk, I'm sorry if I've upset you, I said, trying to de-escalate. Maybe one of my colleagues could assist you better? Oh, so now you're passing me off? Margaret snapped, stepping closer. This is exactly the kind of incompetent service I expect from a place like this. Do you know who I am? My husband is Richard Ellison. We fund half the charities in the city. I could have you fired with one phone call. The threat hung in the air, heavy and real. I felt my throat tighten, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. I couldn't afford to lose this job, not with my rent due in a week and my credit card balance growing by the day. But before I could respond, Margaret grabbed the iced latte from the counter, left there by another customer, and, in a swift, deliberate motion, poured it over the red dress I'd shown her. The liquid splattered across the fabric, staining it irreversibly. Maybe this will teach you to respect your betters, she said, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. This store is a disgrace. The store went silent, the only sound the drip of coffee hitting the polished floor. Every eye was on me, customers, staff, even passers-by outside the glass storefront, their phones recording the spectacle. I stood, frozen, my cheeks burning with humiliation, the bitter smell of coffee filling the air. The dress was worth $2,000, and I knew Carlo would blame me for the damage. My job, my lifeline, was slipping through my fingers, and all I could do was stand there, holding the ruined dress, while the crowd watched Dodd as Margaret turned to leave, her heels clicking triumphantly. I noticed the teenage girl from earlier, still filming, her friend whispering, "This is going viral for sure." Within minutes, I'd learned she was right. By the time I checked my phone during my break, the video was everywhere on X, tagged with hashtag luxury retail fail and racking up thousands of likes. Comments poured in. Asterisk, what a Karen. Asterisk, that poor girl didn't deserve this. But others were crueler. Asterisk, she should have known better than to argue with a customer like that. My name wasn't in the video, but my face was, and the internet didn't care about the truth. To them, I was just the salesgirl who'd failed at her job. I wanted to disappear. to run out of the store and never come back. But I couldn't. I had bills to pay, a life to hold together. So I stood there, clutching the ruined dress, my hands trembling, and tried to breathe through the weight of it all. The crowd began to disperse, some whispering, others shaking their heads. I was alone in the wreckage of the moment, or so I thought, until a voice cut through the silence, calm and commanding, promising to change everything. The silence in Lux's Vogue was deafening, the kind that follows a public spectacle when everyone holds their breath, waiting for the next act. The ruined red dress dripped coffee onto the polished floor, each drop a reminder of my humiliation. Margaret Ellison stood triumphant, her Hermes bag slung over her shoulder, her face radiating smug satisfaction. The crowd outside the storefront pressed closer, phones raised, capturing every second of my unraveling for X and TikTok. I could already see the headlines in my mind. Asterisk salesgirl owned by elite customer, watch her crumble. My cheeks burned, my hands shook, and I fought back tears, knowing that crying would only make the viral video worse. I needed this job, but in that moment, I felt like nothing, a nobody in a world that belonged to people like Margaret. Then, a voice cut through the silence like a blade, deep and commanding, yet eerily calm. Touch that dress again, and you'll regret it. Every head in the store turned. Standing at the entrance was a man I'd never seen before, his presence filling the room like a storm cloud. He was tall, early 30s, with dark hair neatly combed back and a tailored navy suit that screamed money without trying too hard. But it wasn't his appearance that made the air shift. It was the way he carried himself, like someone who didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. The crowd parted instinctively as he stepped forward, his eyes locked on Margaret with an intensity that made her freeze. "Excuse me?" Margaret said, her voice faltering for the first time. Her confidence, so unshakable moments ago, seemed to waver under his gaze. "Who do you think you are?" The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked toward me, his polished shoes clicking softly on the floor. He stopped beside me, close enough that I could smell the faint cedarwood of his cologne, and placed a hand lightly on my shoulder. The gesture was protective, almost possessive, and it sent a jolt through me. "You just humiliated my wife," he said, his tone steady but laced with steel, "in front of all these people. I saw everything." "Your wife?" Margaret's eyes widened, darting between us. This salesgirl? You must be joking." I was as shocked as she was. My wife? I'd never seen this man in my life, yet here he was, claiming me as his own in front of a crowd of strangers. My mind raced, but I was too stunned to speak, my hand still clutching the coffee-soaked dress. The crowd murmured, phones still recording, and I caught a whisper from someone nearby. "Is that who I think it is?" "I'm not joking," the man said, his voice unwavering. "You insulted her, berated her, and destroyed store property. And for what? Because you thought she couldn't fight back." He turned to the crowd, his gaze sweeping over them. "Anyone who thinks they can treat people like this because of their status is mistaken. Very mistaken." Margaret's face flushed red, but she tried to regain her footing. "This is ridiculous," she said, her voice rising again. She was incompetent. She wasted my time, and I have every right to demand better service. My husband is Richard Ellison. Do you know what that means in this city?" The man smiled, but it wasn't friendly. It was the kind of smile that made you feel like you'd just stepped into a trap. "I know exactly who Richard Ellison is," he said, "and I know he'd be embarrassed to see his wife acting like this. But more importantly, I own several stores in this mall, including this one, and I can have you banned from every single one of them." The crowd gasped, whispers rippling through the store. Margaret's bravado faltered, her eyes darting to the glass storefront where 2 security guards had appeared, their radios crackling. I hadn't seen the man signal them, but they were there, waiting for his word. Is there a problem here? One of the guards asked, his tone professional but firm. This woman vandalized store property and humiliated an employee, the man said, his hand still on my shoulder. I'd like her escorted out of the mall. That's outrageous, Margaret protested, her voice now tinged with panic. I barely touched that dress. She provoked me. Do you know what my husband will do when he hears about this? The man's expression didn't change. And do you know who I am? He asked quietly, leaning slightly forward. For the first time, Margaret really looked at him, and I saw recognition dawn in her eyes, followed by a flicker of fear. Oh, God, she whispered, her hand tightening on her bag. You're James Bennett. The name hit me like a shockwave. James Bennett. Even I had heard of him, though he kept a low profile. He was a tech billionaire, the mastermind behind Neuralink Solutions, a company that had revolutionized artificial intelligence for everything from self-driving cars to cybersecurity. In 2025, his software powered half the apps on my phone, but he rarely appeared in the media, preferring to let his work speak for itself. If the rumors on X were true, his net worth was in the tens of billions, and his influence reached far beyond Silicon Valley. Now you know, James said, his voice still calm but carrying an undeniable weight. And now you're going to leave. Margaret looked around, as if hoping someone would intervene, but the crowd was no longer on her side. Faces that had been curious now stared at her with a mix of fascination and judgment. The teenage girl who'd been filming lowered her phone, her eyes wide. This isn't over, Margaret said, but her voice trembled. I'll be speaking to my husband about this store and its employees. Please do, James replied. I'm sure my legal team would love to discuss your behavior today. Property damage is a serious matter, and we have plenty of witnesses. He nodded toward the crowd, many of whom were still holding their phones. The security guards stepped forward, and Margaret had no choice but to follow them out. As she left, her heels clicking furiously, the crowd parted, some whispering, others shaking their heads. The store buzzed with conversation, the tension slowly dissipating like smoke. But I was still frozen, James's hand on my shoulder grounding me in a moment that felt like a fever dream. He turned to me, his expression softening. Are you okay? He asked, his voice gentle now, almost tender. I nodded. Though my hands were still trembling, the ruined dress clutched tightly against my chest. Thank you, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I don't know why you did that, but thank you. He glanced around the store, where customers were pretending to browse, but clearly eavesdropping. Is there somewhere we can talk? Privately? I hesitated, still processing the fact that James Bennett had just stepped in to save me. This way, I said, leading him to a small storage area behind the counter, cluttered with boxes and spare hangers. It wasn't much, but it was away from the prying eyes of the crowd and their ever-present phones. Once we were alone, I turned to him, my heart still pounding. Why did you say I was your wife? I asked, my voice shaking. You don't even know me. He studied me for a moment, his dark eyes searching mine as if weighing a decision. I've been watching you for a while, he said finally. Not in a creepy way. I've been in and out of this mall for weeks, checking on my properties. I've seen how you handle customers, even the difficult ones. You're professional, patient, and kind. You didn't deserve what that woman did to you. I blinked, trying to process his words. But why lie? Why not just tell her to stop? Because people like her don't listen to reason, he said, his voice firm but not unkind. They only understand power. Claiming you were my wife was the fastest way to make her realize she'd crossed a line. I stared at him, my mind reeling. This man, one of the most powerful people in the country, had stepped in to defend me, a nobody, a salesgirl drowning in debt. You said you own stores here? I asked, still trying to make sense of it all. He nodded. Several, including this one. But that's not important right now. What's important is that you shouldn't have to endure treatment like that. No one should. I touched the dress, the coffee stained cold against my fingers. I need this job, I said quietly. I can't afford to make trouble. He tilted his head, studying me again. What's your name? Sophie Carter, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Well, Sophie Carter, he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. I have a proposition for you. But first, let me ask you something. Are you happy here? The question caught me off guard, and for a moment, I didn't know how to answer. Happy? I was surviving, but was that the same thing? As I stood there, staring into the eyes of a man who just turned my world upside down, I realized that whatever came next, nothing would ever be the same. The storage room behind Luke's Vogue's counter was a cramped sanctuary of cardboard boxes and spare hangers, but it felt like a fortress compared to the buzzing storefront where I'd just been humiliated. My hands still trembled as I set the coffee-stained dress on a box, the bitter smell lingering like a reminder of Margaret Ellison's cruelty. James Bennett stood across from me, his navy suit impeccable even in the dim light, his dark eyes studying me with a mix of concern and curiosity. I was still reeling from his intervention, claiming I was his wife, facing down one of LS elite like it was nothing. James Bennett, the tech billionaire behind Neuralink Solutions, had stepped into my world and turned it upside down. And now, he wanted to talk privately. Why did you help me? I asked again, my voice steadier now but still laced with disbelief. You don't know me. I'm just a salesgirl. James leaned against a stack of boxes, his posture relaxed but his gaze intense. You're not just anything, Sophie, he said. I've been in and out of this mall for weeks, checking on my investments. I've seen you with customers, rude ones, demanding ones, impossible ones. You handle them with grace, even when they don't deserve it. What happened out there? He nodded toward the storefront. No one should be treated like that. I swallowed, unsure how to process the fact that someone like him had noticed me. It's part of the job, I said, shrugging. Some people think they can talk to you however they want when you're behind a counter. That doesn't make it right, he said, his voice firm, and it doesn't mean you have to accept it. He paused, as if choosing his next words carefully. I meant what I asked out there. Are you happy here? The question hit me like a wave, stirring up emotions I buried under months of exhaustion and debt. Happy? I thought of my tiny apartment, where the rent ate up half my paycheck. I thought of the student loan notices piling up, the credit card bills I could barely pay the minimum on, the dream of finishing college that felt further away every day. In 2025, LA was a city of extremes, glamorous for the wealthy, punishing for everyone else. Inflation had turned basics like groceries into luxuries, and I was barely keeping my head above water. I'm surviving, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. I need this job. I can't afford to be happy. James nodded, as if he'd expected that answer. I have a proposition for you, he said. It's going to sound unusual, maybe, even crazy, but I want you to hear me out. I crossed my arms, my curiosity outweighing my caution. Okay, I'm listening. He straightened, his expression serious. I need a wife. Not a real one, a business arrangement. My grandfather's will has a clause. I have to be married by my 32nd birthday, which is 6 months from now, or I lose control of Neuralink Solutions. The company goes to a board of trustees, and I'm out. I stared at him, my mouth dry. You're serious? You need to get married to keep your company. He nodded. My grandfather believed a man needs a family to stay grounded. He thought, without a wife, I'd become obsessed with work, lose sight of what matters. It's an outdated idea, but it's binding. If I don't meet the terms, I lose everything I've built. I shook my head, trying to wrap my mind around it. But you're James Bennett. You could find anyone. Why me? He smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. I've tried. Believe me. But every woman I've met sees me as a paycheck, not a person. They're more interested in my money than in who I am. I don't have time for a real relationship. Not with the company under pressure. I need someone I can trust, someone who won't try to exploit the situation. And you think that's me? I asked, incredulous. You just met me. I've seen enough, he said. You're honest, hardworking, and you treated that woman with more respect than she deserved. You're not chasing fame or fortune. You're just trying to build a life. That's what I need. I leaned against the wall, my mind spinning. What exactly are you proposing? A marriage in name only, he said. 1 year. You'd live in a separate apartment, have your own space. We'd appear together at public events maybe a dozen times over the year. You'd smile for the cameras, play the part of my wife. In return, I'd pay you $5 million. Enough to clear your debts, go back to school, start whatever life you want. $5 million. The number hit me like a freight train. It was more money than I could imagine, enough to pay off my student loans, my credit cards, my rent arrears. Enough to enroll in a marketing program, buy a small house, breathe without the constant weight of financial stress. But it was also insane. Marry a stranger? Pretend to be his wife? I barely knew this man, and he was offering me a fortune to play a role. This is crazy, I said, shaking my head. Why not hire an actress? Someone who's used to performing? Because actresses want publicity, he said. They turn this into a career move, leak it to the tabloids, make it a spectacle. You're different. You just want a chance to start over. I respect that. I didn't know what to say. The storage room felt smaller, the air heavier. I need to think about this, I managed. It's a lot. Of course, he said, pulling a business card from his pocket and handing it to me. My direct number is on there. Call me when you've decided. But Sophie, I'm serious about this. I think we could help each other. He left me standing there, the card smooth and heavy in my hand, his name embossed in sleek black letters. James Bennett, CEO, Neuralink Solutions. As the door swung shut behind him, I felt like I'd just stepped off a cliff, and I wasn't sure if I was falling or flying. Asterisk back in the store, the rest of my shift passed in a blur. Customers came and went, their requests for sizes and styles fading into background noise as James Bennett's words echoed in my mind. Asterisk $5 million. A marriage in name only. Asterisk, it was the kind of offer you'd see in a movie, not in real life. But as I refolded dresses and smiled through small talk, I couldn't shake the image of a life without debt, without the constant fear of falling behind. Still, the idea of pretending to be someone's wife, especially someone like James Bennett, felt like stepping into a world I didn't belong in. By the time I clocked out, the sun was setting over L.A., casting a golden glow across the Westfield Pinnacle's glass facade. I checked my phone as I walked to my beat-up Honda, and my stomach dropped. The video of Margaret's outburst had exploded on X, with over 50,000 likes and thousands of comments. Asterisk, what a nightmare customer, one user wrote. Asterisk, that salesgirl deserves a medal for not losing it. But others were less kind. Asterisk, she should have known her place. Don't mess with people like that. My face was plastered across the platform, my humiliation now public property. I turned off my phone, my hands shaking, and drove home to my tiny studio apartment in Koreatown. The apartment was a stark reminder of my reality. A single room with peeling paint, a mattress on the floor, and a stack of unopened bills on the counter. Rent had gone up again, thanks to LA's relentless housing market, and I was one missed payment away from eviction. I sat on the mattress, James's business card in my hand, and let myself think about his offer. $5 million could erase my debts, fund a degree in digital marketing, give me a chance to build a career I'd always dreamed of. But it meant tying myself to a stranger, living a lie, and stepping into a world of wealth and power. I didn't understand. I thought about my mom, who'd passed away 3 years earlier. She'd always said opportunities come to those brave enough to take them, even if they seem impossible. But she'd also warned me about deals that sounded too good to be true. I opened my laptop, ignoring the overdue Wi-Fi bill, and searched for James Bennett. Articles popped up about Neuralink Solutions, his AI empire that powered everything from smart cities to medical diagnostics. But there were also stories about the pressures he faced. A recent data privacy scandal had tanked his company's stock, and new regulations in 2025 were tightening the screws on tech giants. If he lost control of Neuralink, it wouldn't just be a personal loss. It could disrupt innovations millions relied on. I closed the laptop and stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. James had said he'd been watching me, that he trusted me because I wasn't chasing his money. But could I trust him? He seemed genuine, but he was still a billionaire, part of a world where people like me were invisible until they needed us for something. Yet his intervention in the store had been real, his anger at Margaret's cruelty authentic. He'd seen me when no one else had. The next morning, I sat in a coffee shop a few blocks from the mall, the business card on the table in front of me. I'd asked James to meet me here, away from the store's chaos, to talk more. He arrived promptly, still in a suit but less formal, his sleeves rolled up, revealing a sleek smartwatch that probably cost more than my car. "Thanks for meeting me," I said, clutching my coffee. "I have questions." "Ask away," he said, settling into the chair across from me. His presence was less intimidating here, but still magnetic, like he could command a room without trying. "Why me, really?" I asked. "You could find someone with more experience in your world." He leaned forward, his voice low. "My world is full of people who want something from me: money, status, power. You don't. You're real, Sophie. You're fighting for a life, not a headline. And I saw how you handled that situation yesterday. You didn't break, even when you had every reason to." I nodded, processing his words. "What happens after the year? We just divorce?" "Exactly," he said. "You walk away with the money. No strings attached. I keep my company. We both get what we need." I took a deep breath, my mom's words echoing again. "Be brave, Sophie." "Okay," I said finally. "I'll do it." He smiled, a real one this time, his eyes lighting up. "Are you sure? Once we start, there's no going back." "I'm sure," I said, and for the first time in months, I meant it. As I shook his hand, I felt like I was stepping into a new life, one I couldn't have imagined 24 hours ago. The first time I stepped into the penthouse James Bennett had arranged for me, I thought I'd walked into someone else's life. The apartment, perched on the 40th floor of a sleek a high-rise, had floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the city's glittering skyline. Marble countertops, a walk-in closet bigger than my old studio, and a bed that looked like it belonged in a 5-star hotel. It was a far cry from my Koreatown mattress on the floor. But as I stood there, clutching the keycard James had given, I felt like an imposter. This was my home for the next year, part of the deal I'd signed. A fake marriage to a tech billionaire in exchange for $5 million. I was Sophie Carter, former retail worker, now playing the role of Mrs. James Bennett. And I had no idea what I was doing. The contract was clear. 1 year of appearances at public events, smiles for the cameras, and a convincing act as James's wife to secure his company, Neuralink Solutions. In return, I'd walk away with enough money to pay off my debts, finish my marketing degree, and build a life I'd only dreamed of. We'd signed the papers a week after our coffee shop meeting, in a sterile law office with a view of the Pacific. James's lawyer, a sharp woman named Evelyn, had gone over every detail. Separate residences, no physical intimacy, complete confidentiality. "This is a business arrangement," she'd said, her pen tapping the contract. "Stick to the terms, and everyone wins." But standing in that penthouse, I felt less like a winner and more like a fish out of water. The first event was in 2 days, a tech conference where James was keynote speaker, and I was expected to play the part of the charming, sophisticated wife. I'd never even been to a gala, let alone one where I'd be photographed next to one of America's richest men. As I unpacked my few belongings, my phone buzzed with a notification from X. The video of Margaret Ellison's outburst at Lux Vogue was still circulating, now with 200,000 likes and a new wave of comments. Asterisk. Wait, is that the Sophie Carter? Did she really marry James Bennett? My stomach churned. The internet was already piecing together my story, and I wasn't ready for the scrutiny. James had hired a stylist, a no-nonsense woman named Lila, to prepare me for the public eye. She arrived the next morning with racks of designer dresses, heels I could barely walk in, and a crash course in high society etiquette. "Posture, darling," she said, adjusting my shoulders as I tried on a midnight blue gown. "You're not selling dresses anymore. You're selling a lifestyle." Lila taught me how to smile without showing too much teeth, how to nod attentively during boring speeches, and how to dodge intrusive questions from reporters. "They'll dig," she warned, especially after that X video. Everyone wants to know who the retail girl turned billionaire's wife is. The tech conference was held at the LA Convention Center, a sprawling venue packed with industry leaders, influencers, and journalists. James looked effortless in a tailored black suit, his presence commanding as he mingled with CEOs and investors. I clung to his arm, my heart pounding under the weight of my emerald green dress and the stares of strangers. "You're doing fine," James whispered, his hand brushing mine reassuringly. "Just smile and nod. They're more interested in me than you." But that wasn't true. I caught the whispers, the sidelong glances, the phone subtly angled to snap photos. By the end of the night, X was buzzing with posts. Asterisk. James Bennett's mystery wife stuns at TechCon 2025. Alongside less flattering ones. Asterisk. She's just a gold digger who got lucky. Asterisk. Despite the pressure, there were moments when I saw James differently. During his keynote, he spoke passionately about Neuralink's mission to make AI accessible for healthcare, describing how their tech could diagnose diseases faster than any doctor. His voice carried a sincerity that surprised me, a man who cared about more than money or power. Afterward, as we stood in a quiet corner of the venue, he asked, "What did you think?" "It was inspiring," I said honestly. "You really believe in what you're doing." He nodded, a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. "It's why I need to keep the company. It's not just about me. It's about the people we could help." That night, as I lay in my too-big bed, I realized I was starting to see James not as a billionaire, but as a person with his own battles. But I pushed the thought away. This was a business deal, nothing more. Getting attached was a risk I couldn't afford. Asterisk. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of events. Charity galas, product launches, even a dinner with LA's mayor. Each one was a performance, and I was learning to play my part. But the spotlight was relentless. The X video from Lux Vogue kept resurfacing, with tabloids digging into my past, my divorce, my dropped-out college years, my retail job. A headline from a gossip site read, Asterisk, from salesgirl to socialite, who is Sophie Carter Bennett? I avoided reading the comments, but I couldn't escape the whispers at events. "She's not one of us," a woman in a pearl necklace murmured to her friend as I passed. How did she land him? James noticed, too. At a fundraiser for a children's hospital, when a reporter asked me point blank if I'd trapped James for his money, he stepped in smoothly. "My wife's here because she's exceptional," he said, his arm around me. "Anyone who thinks otherwise hasn't met her." His words were a shield, but they also stirred something in me, a warmth I wasn't supposed to feel. The biggest challenge came when Neuralink hit a crisis. A data breach rumor, fueled by whistleblowers. Post on X sent the company's stock plummeting. New 2025 regulations on AI data privacy were already squeezing the industry, and James was working 18-hour days to manage the fallout. One night, he showed up at my penthouse unannounced, his tie loosened, his face etched with exhaustion. I need a break," he said, holding up a bottle of wine. "Mind if I crash here for a bit?" We sat on my balcony, the LA skyline twinkling below, and he opened up. "This breach could ruin us," he admitted. "The board's breathing down my neck, and if I lose control now, everything my grandfather built is gone." His vulnerability caught me off guard. I'd seen him as untouchable, but here he was, just a man fighting to hold it all together. "Maybe you're trying too hard to control everything," I said, surprising myself. "In retail, I learned you can't please everyone. Sometimes you just have to focus on what matters most." He looked at me, a slow smile spreading. "You're good at this, you know, cutting through the noise." That night, we talked for hours about his childhood in Seattle, my dreams of a marketing career, even the X video that had turned me into a meme. I laughed when he admitted he'd read some of the comments. "They think you're a superhero," I teased, "or a villain, depending on the thread." "Maybe I'm neither," he said, his eyes meeting mine. "Maybe I'm just someone who saw a woman who deserved better." The moment hung between us, heavy with possibility, but I looked away. This was a contract, I reminded myself. Feelings weren't part of the deal. Still, the lines were blurring. At a product launch for Neuralink's new AI assistant, I tripped in my heels and spilled wine on a tech blogger's shirt. Mortified, I braced for a social media storm, but James laughed it off, charming the blogger into forgetting the incident. "You're human," he said later. "That's why I picked you." His words stayed with me, chipping away at the walls I'd built. By month 3, I was no longer just playing a role, I was finding my footing in James's world. But the pressure of the lie, the scrutiny of the media, and the growing spark between us made one thing clear. This fake marriage was going to be anything but simple. As the 1-year mark of our fake marriage approached, I stood in front of a mirror in my penthouse, adjusting the straps of a silver gown for the Pinnacle Gala, the same event Margaret Ellison had been shopping for when she'd humiliated me. At Looks Vogue, the irony wasn't lost on me. A year ago, I was Sophie Carter, a retail worker drowning in debt, invisible to the world. Now, I was Mrs. James Bennett, at least on paper, standing on the edge of a life I'd never imagined. But the reflection staring back at me wasn't just a polished version of myself. She was stronger, more confident, and ready to take on whatever came next. Yet, as I prepared to face the LA elite, a question gnawed at me. What happened when the contract ended? And why did the thought of leaving James make my chest ache? The past year had changed me in ways I hadn't expected. I'd navigated charity galas, tech conferences, and relentless media scrutiny. My face splashed across X with hashtags like #Billionaire's wife and #Cinderella story. The viral video of Margaret's outburst still lingered online, but I'd learned to tune out the noise. I'd enrolled in an online marketing program, paid for with James's advance, and was acing my classes. My debts were gone, my future within reach. But the biggest change wasn't the money, it was James. Somewhere between the staged photo ops and late-night talks, I'd started to see him not as a billionaire, but as a man who cared deeply, who fought for his company's mission, who made me laugh when I spilled wine or stumbled in heels. I'd fallen for him, and that wasn't part of the deal. At the Pinnacle Gala, held in a glittering ballroom overlooking downtown L.A., the air was thick with wealth and ambition. James stood beside me, his hand warm against my back as we posed for photographers. But the mood shifted when a reporter from a tech blog cornered us, her smile sharp. "Sophie, rumors say your marriage is a sham to save Neuralink. Care to comment?" The question was a dagger, and the crowd around us went quiet, phones ready to capture my response. Before I could speak, James stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "My wife is the best decision I've ever made. If you're looking for a story, write about Neuralink's as new AI diagnostics saving lives, not baseless gossip." His defense was swift, but the reporter's smirk told me the rumors weren't going away. As we moved to our table, I felt the weight of his words. The best decision I've ever made. Was it just part of the act? Later, in a quiet corner of the ballroom, I confronted him. "James, what happens when this ends? The contract's almost up. I've got my life back, but what about us?" He looked at me, his dark eyes searching mine. "Sophie, I've been asking myself the same thing. This started as a deal, but it's not that anymore. Not for me." He took a deep breath, his usual confidence replaced by vulnerability. "I didn't expect to care about you this much." "I don't want you to walk away." My heart pounded. "You mean that? Or is this just to keep the company?" He took my hand, his touch steady. "The company's secure. The board's satisfied. This isn't about that. It's about you. I want you in my life, Sophie, not as a contract, but as you." For a moment, I couldn't speak. The past year had been a whirlwind of pretending, but this was real. "I want that too," I whispered, and when he kissed me, the ballroom faded away. It wasn't part of the script, but it was the truest thing I'd ever felt. The gala took an unexpected turn when I spotted Margaret Ellison across the room, her cream suit as pristine as ever. She approached us, her expression a mix of caution and forced civility. "Sophie," she said, her voice tight, "I owe you an apology for last year. I was out of line." I stood taller, the memory of her coffee-soaked dress stinging but no longer defining me. "Thank you, Margaret," I said calmly. "But I've moved on. I hope you have too." Her eyes widened, but she nodded and walked away. I didn't need her validation anymore. I'd found my own as the night ended. James and I agreed to continue our relationship, not as a contract, but as something real. The $5 million arrived in my account the next day, and I used it to pay off my loans, secure my marketing degree, and start planning a career I'd always wanted. But the real gift was James, not the billionaire, but the man who'd seen me when I felt invisible. This story is a testament to the power of resilience and kindness in the face of adversity. Sophie's journey shows that even in our lowest moments, when the world seems determined to break us, unexpected allies can emerge, offering not just help but hope. It's a reminder that everyone, from a retail worker to a billionaire, deserves respect, and that our actions ripple far beyond the moment. Margaret's cruelty led to Sophie's transformation, proving that sometimes our worst experiences open doors to our greatest opportunities. In a world driven by social media and status, this story calls us to look beyond appearances, to value people for who they are, not what they have. Be kind, because you never know who's watching or how your choices might change a life. If Sophie's story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe to Legacy Stories on YouTube or X for more tales of courage, redemption, and the moments that shape us. Share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in Sophie's shoes? Let's keep the conversation going, because every story has a lesson, and every life has a legacy.